All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. Never mind, it's The Market Futures. See, I am so excited for The Market Open. I know I'm 2 minutes late, but I am so excited for The Market Open tomorrow morning that I'm already thinking it's The Market Open. We have got the futures time, 7:45. We've got about 13 minutes until the market does open. At least the overnight market's open, and we've got a lot to talk about in terms of what have happened over the past 24 hours. We have had so many conflicting headlines, literally in the past 12 hours, forget the past 48 hours, that a lot of people thought the futures were going to go red. I mean, it looked like there was a lot of bad headlines over the weekend. And for those that haven't seen the futures, we did go red for a second, then we flipped green. Now we're back red. We're not as red as people thought. And even if, quite frankly, we did fall 1%, I think a lot of people wouldn't think it's not warranted given how bad some of these headlines were over the weekend. But the NASDAQ down 0.34, S&P down 0.17. We did take out the Friday lows for the first 20 minutes of the futures being open. We were below 646. Dow Jones barely down 23 points. I mean, overall, it's not that crazy. Oil even spiked up to $100 a barrel. And then it came down back. Where's oil right now? I think it's at like 95 or something. So we were above 100. Now we're at 98. Still not amazing to see oil at these levels. But the fact that it went up and then came back down, same thing with Bitcoin. It went all the way down and now is starting to recover and come back up a little bit. Makes me think maybe we'll have a little bit of a decent overnight market open. I mean, maybe we won't. Obviously, we've been part of this game for so many months at this point in terms of a faded open, whether it's green or red, and then going in the opposite direction. Bitcoin right there, 67,992. It was way worse than this over the weekend, as per some comments from Trump that we'll talk about. But we'll see when the market opens, and we'll do a recap of kind of what happened Friday, because the after hours action on Friday was also crazy, which is, leading to, I think, a lot of confusion for the markets as we get into the overnight futures open. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I do have the Robinhood hoodie. It came in today. It's nice quality, dude. It's very nice quality. So we're rocking the Robinhood hoodie. It is officially spring. It is finally good weather in New Jersey. I know this is usually for the winter, but we had to bust out the vanilla flurries today just because, spring is in the air and feeling a little vanilla. I don't even know what that means, but it smells good. So, yeah, it was the first day where it was like 65 degrees here in Jersey, and I hope tomorrow it sustains that. But, man, it just feels so – when I was younger, I really didn't like spring. I kind of always liked fall and the cold. Now, as I get older, I'm not a fan of the cold anymore. Like, I don't like the cold. So, it is nice. It is really nice to just go outside and go for a walk, and that's what I did today. So we got a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. The LA meetup is happening this weekend. And speaking of the LA meetup, let's just get this out of the way real quick. And then we will get into the overnight price action. And then we will talk about all the different headlines that happened over the weekend. Bessent said stuff, Trump said stuff, the Iranians responded to what Trump said. It's a lot of going back and forth, a lot of stuff we have to break down to kind of figure out how the market's going to perceive it. And then we'll see how the overnight futures open. But I did indeed do what I said I was going to do over the weekend, which is vibe code website. So I did it over the weekend. It was super. I did it today, and it took me an hour. It's called akmedia.news. Of course, it's not working now that I want it to open. This site was paused as it's reached its usage limits. Okay, so I probably have to go pay some bills, which makes sense because I only paid for a domain name. I was wondering how it was getting hosted for free. It's like I probably needed to pay some of their stuff to pay it off. But I'm using this website called Netlify, which is like what Claude recommended to be able to host your website. And I will fix that after the overnight show. But the takeaway lesson from this is, dude, it took less than an hour. Yeah, some of you guys can't see it. Okay, it was working for the past 5 hours, but I guess I gotta pay some more. Too many people clicked on it, and now it's not working. But we'll upgrade the servers. I mean, it literally took a couple of hours, and it was one of the first times I actually vibe coded something. Vercel or Netlify both could. Yeah, I mean, Claude recommended Netlify, and so I did that. I didn't even have to look at a single line of code. Not a single line of code. I mean, when we talk about prompt engineering, when we talk about literally just like typing in natural language what you want to happen, and then it happens. I mean, it was insanity. It's absolutely, and I know it's very basic. It's a website that has a couple of tabs, right? Like it's nothing complex, but The fact that it was done the way that it was done, the fact that I could just tell it, hey, you messed up here, fix this. Hey, this is not right, fix this. And it just fixed it. And then if I didn't like the solution, I was like, actually, can you do this? And it just fixed it. Like I didn't have to do anything other than tell it what to do. I pay $20 a month for Claude, but if I had ran out of credits when I was actually developing the website in Claude, I mean, I would have gladly paid more because it saved me a lot of time, saved me a lot of energy. I didn't need to learn how to code, and I got the job done. So I can only imagine that being in the enterprise with all the different use cases that we've heard about, whether it comes when it comes to Nemo Cloud from NVIDIA, obviously AIP and all the use cases from Palantir, just all these different software companies implementing these use cases at scale for the biggest companies in the world. If individual people get so much joy and productivity out of building this stuff, I can only imagine when real business use cases start to evolve, which is what we're seeing. So I think all of it goes back to NVIDIA. All of it goes back to AMD, Broadcom, all the semis. That semis trade does not seem like it's slowing down. We'll talk a lot about what happened at GTC and some of the things Jensen announced. Also, Elon announced a bunch of things over the weekend, which I am confused about. Like, if you assume in the most optimistic scenario what Elon announced over the weekend with the terafab, NVIDIA is going to be like a $40 trillion company. Like, and Tesla's probably going to be a $40 trillion. Like, if you really assume the most optimistic version of what Elon is saying, it is a very amazing and interesting story that he's printing. But if you think that he's painting this story because the SpaceX IPO is coming out, which I think is a little bit more in tune for what he's saying, and like I get the gist of what he's saying, and we'll talk about it. But the way they did the presentation, the numbers that they're throwing out, I mean, it is an obvious attempt to get people and investors to be excited about the SpaceX IPO. Even if 10% of it is true, I mean, it seems like NVIDIA is the most undervalued stock in the market, and the broader semiconductor ecosystem is not going to be slowing down. So we'll talk about the terafab news that happened over the weekend, and maybe it has implications for Tesla. I mean, realistically, it has more implications for SpaceX, but we'll see if Tesla stocks reacts to that when the market opens, and we'll see what happens from there. Is Elon hiring a mid to make his website? That is funny. That is very funny. But no, guys, seriously, like, I don't know if I mean, I'm sure so many of you have tried to vibe code something and have seen the magic of it. I've been talking about vibe coding for the past couple of months, but I haven't actually done it. I haven't had the time to just sit down and do it. And today I sat down for an hour and I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, genuinely unbelievable to type words and to just get something, a product that I can then use, that I can go about my life and just move on and not have to learn all the internal nuances of how to do something. Like, you just do it. And I think that democratization of opportunity, the internet democratized distribution. Everyone can start a channel and a brand and a website. AI is democratizing the ability to actually put products out there into the world, which means the barrier to entry is becoming zero, which also means that the cost of distribution probably is going to go higher because you have to be able to actually get your product out into the world. But the ability to have an idea and put that idea into the world costs zero. It is being subsidized by all the big tech companies that are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on CapEx. And ultimately, we are the beneficiaries of that. And that's why I think these AI companies are growing at the rate that they are growing at. S&P 500, again, closed 0.73% up on Friday. We're going to see how it opens up, likely going to be flat to slightly red. Now, real quick, we got 5 minutes till the overnight markets open. What happened on Friday? Well, the reason we tanked on Friday towards the end of the day is because the market started to realize that this war was not going to end anytime soon because of a report by multiple media outlets saying that boots are seriously considered to get on the ground. Ironically, when the market opened, I did a poll on how many people think boots are actually going to go on the ground. I think it was like 60-40. 60% of you said boots would be on the ground. 40% said no. And basically at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, CBS reported that boots would be on. Yes, it was quad witching day, which is also, part of the pain that we saw on Friday as well. But CBS News reported that President Trump was considering boots on the ground. Then at 3:43, which is 17 minutes before the market closed, Trump said, I don't want to do a ceasefire with Iran. The S&P 500 hit a new 2026 low because obviously if he doesn't want to do a ceasefire, that means the war is going to continue. Then 90 minutes later at 5:13 Eastern, about an hour and a half after the market closed, Trump said the U.S. is considering winding down the war, and that is why the S&P 500 actually ended at 653 versus 648. At 648, we were down 1.45% on the day. At 653, we ended up recovering almost half of what we lost. I mean, almost exactly 50% of what we lost throughout the day in the after-hour session. I mean, talk about volatility. Talk about volatility. Like, one headline means we go down 2%. The other headline means we recover half of what we lost in less than half the time that it took to lose it. Like, it is becoming unbelievable, the swings and gyrations that we are experiencing in this market. But we did get some level of analysis over the weekend from Trump that potentially is signaling more optimism around this war ending soon. And so we'll talk about that after we go through some of the price action and, kind of see if things are going to be a little bit better going into, what is this, last week of March? Yeah, this is the last week of March. We're headed to April. 3 months of the year done. Time is moving quick. And it's kind of crazy how fast it's happening, but it is indeed happening. We also had this headline just come out. The Department of State advised Americans worldwide to exercise increased caution, aka they're saying don't go to the Middle East. I mean, that's what that really means. And we looked at the Dubai real estate prices the other day, and I was doing a little bit more research into it over the weekend. Dubai's economy is really contingent on tourism. I mean, obviously the State Department is being wise to tell people not to travel, which obviously is going to affect a lot of those Middle Eastern countries that rely on travel. By the way, have you guys seen these screenshots of people traveling through JFK or through Dallas-Fort Worth? I mean, it is kind of, look at, like, I showed you guys the pictures from Newark, but SFO was fine when I came back from San Francisco. Look at JFK. I mean, this is to get into the airport, bro. It's not even to get through security. It's to get into the airport. So for those that are coming to the LA meetup on March 28th, if you have to fly, which I do as well, I mean, I'm getting to the airport 3 hours early, even though it's a domestic flight. Like, at this point, I told you guys I missed my flight going to GTC. It got delayed by an hour, which is okay. I mean, I got on the next flight, but I haven't missed the flight in a long time. And I didn't miss it because I was late. I missed it because the line for security made me late. So yeah, definitely something we have to think about. Trump did comment about TSA over the weekend. We'll talk about some of the stuff he said as well. So let's get into this overnight futures open. We'll see where we go from there. We'll see some of the price action. Put in the chat, what do you guys think? Red or green for the open? Obviously, the index probably will be slightly red, but at least these individual growth stocks, let's see how bad they take a hit. Again, NVIDIA, Intel, SoFi, DraftKings, Nebius, Dell, SMCI, they were all up almost 2% after hours based on that tweet from Trump saying that he thinks the war is going to end soon, after he said that he wants boots on the ground. So let's see what this overnight price action looks like, and then we'll dive into all the stuff that happened over the weekend, and we will keep going from there. All right, here we go. Thank you all for being here. March 22nd, 8 p.m. Overnight markets are open. S&P goes red, down 0.3. Nebius, down 1.3. SoFi, down 0.2. NVIDIA, up 0.3. Well, not really, because it closed at 174. The overnight market is at 173. I don't know why Webull is showing it. It's up from the Friday close at 4 p.m. It's not up from the Friday close at 8 p.m. So technically that's red. SMCI, that goes down 1.3%. Figma's down 0.5. Amazon's down 0.06. Microsoft down 0.12. Meta 591. That closed at 593 at 4. Then Trump pumped it at 515. It went to 597. Now it's back to 591. So you're actually not seeing big, any level of rebound, quite frankly, at least not yet. HIMS is down 1.3. Oracle's down 1%. IBM is up a little bit, 243. Exxon's up. Chevron's up. VG, I don't know if that trades overnight. Does it? I don't think it does. I'll check on Robinhood if it does, but we don't have it on Webull. That should be likely green. Bitcoin, a little bit of a green candle right there, 67.83 to 67.95. Yeah, NVIDIA is definitely down. 172.72 on NVIDIA after closing at 174. There you go, officially red. Intel, that's down. Robinhood was toying with below 70. Robinhood is below 70, 69.60. Bitcoin is the catalyst there, and you're seeing that pain on hoodie. Palantir, VG's at 1606. Palantir is up a little bit, actually. Okay, I don't see it on Webull. Let me check Robinhood. You guys are probably right. You are indeed right. VG 1626. 1626 in the overnight markets. Tesla goes down. Okay, the Terafab story was not enough to pump Tesla. We will talk about that in depth and kind of the implications of what it means, but nonetheless, that's down. AAOI, that's down. Lumentum is down 3%. Coherent is down 2%. SanDisk is down 1%. Micron, which had one of the best earnings we've seen in at least semiconductor history, that's down 2.6%. 412 on Micron. Their forward PE, I think, is now 4.7 at these levels. It was 4.9 on Friday. It's quite incredible, but nonetheless, the market is not ready to give it a premium. SolarEdge is down. Zeta's down. Enphase is down. FedEx down. Rocket Lab flat. Google is down. Apple is down. Where is Meta? We saw that already, right? 591, 590 now on Meta. Viavi, some of the drone stocks are up. Viavi is up 1%. How about Ondas? That is not trading overnight. Tesla still down 0.3. Palantir is holding on to like 40 cents of green, but technically it's not green because it's below the 8 p.m. close on Friday, which was 151.96. It's at 151.08 right now, so technically it is red. Robinhood down 1.5, and then Bitcoin right there, 65,875. All right, so we're red. We are definitely red. SMCI is under 20. Again, the futures open and they were deep red. Then it flipped green. Same thing we saw with oil. And now I wouldn't say we're deep red right here, but the problem was Friday was pretty ugly. So any downturn from these levels that we saw on Friday, it continues to make people think that it is worse than before. Gold and silver, by the way, absolutely dumping. Gold's down another 3%. Silver's down 3%. Copper's down 2%. WTI crude's at 98.77. 98.77. Yes, VG should be going up right now. VG should be going up right now because, obviously, oil spike. Now, oil's not spiking like crazy, but we'll talk about the headlines. The headlines should implicate that oil. I'm surprised oil's actually below 100 right now. We opened at 100 in the futures, then it probably got walked down. But based on some of the stuff that Trump said, I could imagine natural gas and oil spiking very easily tomorrow, which is why VG probably is front running that. Same thing with Cheniere, right? LNG. Yep, that's also green in the overnight markets as well. Next decade, I don't know if that trades overnight, but it doesn't, but that should be green tomorrow morning as well. Even the value names, Verizon's down, Coca-Cola's down, AppLovin's not value, but that one's down 1%. Broadcom down another 0.75. D-Local, that's down. AMD, is that down? AMD is down. Synopsys got a multi-billion-dollar stake by Elliott. That stock is up 3%. Elliott has been taking multiple activist stakes over the past couple of weeks now, and Synopsys is the latest candidate. This one's interesting because NVIDIA actually has a deal with Synopsys. I think NVIDIA invested some money in these guys. And also, when I asked Jensen the question about is software dead at GTC, he used Synopsys and Cadence as his examples to prove to me why software wasn't dead, and he kind of went into this whole example and analogy around those two companies. So, it seems like Elliott is definitely excited about them, and they caught his attention as well. The 10-year, let me pull that up. And that's another thing we got to talk about tonight. The bond market it's not in a great situation. I thought it would be a little bit better than this, but unfortunately, wow, there it is, 4.4. There it is. It was teasing with 4.4 yesterday, or not yesterday, Friday. We were at like 4.38, basically 4.4 if you round it up. Now we are officially at 4.4. Goldman Sachs raises 2026 Brent forecast on Hormuz disruption. We will talk about what the sell side equity analysts are doing. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, BTIG, Oppenheimer. I read a bunch of these reports over the weekend. And look, they're bearish, right? Because how are they not going to be bearish? If they assume oil is going to go up, then they're going to re-rate everything they have for their clients, which could lead to a bit more institutional selling, obviously, because those guys influence their clients to buy or hold. And we already looked at a bunch of different stats on Friday for why the institutions are taking some chips off the table. So, you're going to see a lot more of these headlines of JP Morgan says this, Goldman Sachs says this, because, at this point, that's kind of how they operate, which might be a bullish signal, but it's not 2025 anymore where the taco is that easy. And I think that's why they're more serious on taking down their targets. Someone who hasn't taken down his target, though, Tom Lee, he's still sticking by 7,700. I've seen multiple targets go down from like that 78, 79 range down to 72, 73. Fundstrat has not done that yet, which is very similar to Liberation Day. During Liberation, it took about a couple weeks before people officially lowered their S&P 500 targets, and they did literally at the bottom, which then they had to raise their targets. A lot of them were like, no, it's okay, it'll be fine. But then the pain lasted for so long, they had to finally lower their targets. And then we V-shaped up. And so we're going to see if this time is the same or if there's sort of a different insight in terms of how this plays out. Whereas ETH and Bitcoin, ETH is 2,000, BTC is 6789. All right. Bitcoin tried to make a run up to 69, but came right back down here at 67,000. Okay, so let's talk about what happened over the weekend. Let's get into everything that we have to talk about. The Nikkei, by the way, Japan is down 3%. So you got the international markets also coming down with it. This was to be expected. There you go. The Nikkei right there down 3.38% on the day, or at least on the open. And we'll talk more about some of the other international markets. And then real quick, before we get into all the headlines, we did have a pretty big Palantir deal over the weekend. I don't know if the stock's going to be reflected by this, but essentially Palantir has been chosen by the U.S. Department of War as what they are calling the program of record. So this is essentially creating them as the de facto operating system for the entire military. Now, we already knew this. This was already kind of understood, but the U.S. government released like this AI framework over the weekend, or I think it was like on Friday night, and that kind of designated a bunch of these different rules and ideas around how they think about AI in general, and Palantir's name was dropped in there. And the idea was, hey, like, yeah, when it comes to defense, when it comes to targeting, when it comes to Maven, which everyone knows by now what Maven is, if you're invested in Palantir, basically becoming the backbone of defense within the U.S. government, Palantir is the de facto operating system. What does this mean monetarily? I've heard a couple of things over the weekend, but from my understanding, this should get them to $1 billion alone on this contract every single year. It's not $1 billion yet. Remember, the current Maven contract is $440 million for 5 years. And I think that will be renewed in the coming quarters. And we're going to see like a very big, like 5-year, $5 billion type of dollar announcement. That's just my own hypothesis on this. But if you do the math on the actual money they're making on Maven, and then you look at the implications of what it means to become the entire operating system for the Department of War, yeah, that probably stretches to $1 billion per year just off that contract alone. Mind you, Palantir does about $7 billion in revenue they're guiding for. So 1/7 of their revenue theoretically could be just Maven, which is why it's a very big deal. That's why so much time is spent talking about Maven. But I don't know if it's going to affect the stock right now, right? Because as of now, there's a war going on and oil prices are high, and we're not going to be cutting rates, which is, you know, a bigger deal for the growth stocks that are out there, even if this is a good contract. So very important stuff. We'll talk more about it tomorrow, but you know, ultimately this war is an overhang for anything that is good across any of these individual growth stocks in the market. And that is kind of the more pressing issue that we have to navigate with this as well. SMCI still getting nuked, right? Yep. SMCI. Wow. 6% down. I mean, this thing traded 242 million shares on Friday. There were definitely, I mean, it was down 33%, but there were definitely some dip buyers. There had to be some people buying this thing saying it would catch a bottom. And if you did, it's down 6% again. So we're going to have to see if that one ends up recovering. Again, I think it's a no touch in case NVIDIA says that they're not going to continue doing business with SMCI. Now, I don't think NVIDIA is going to just go cold turkey. We're not going to buy SMCI servers anymore. But, you know, I don't think Jensen's the happiest about this whole smuggling into China situation, especially when things are so tense already geopolitically between the United States and China, and NVIDIA getting caught up in the crosshairs of it. So it's one of those things where I think you let the dust settle, and if you have to buy it higher, you buy it higher. Yes, the stock is cheap, obviously, now that it's down 40%, but it's cheap for a reason, given what happened with the controversy on Friday. Okay, let's talk about what happened over the weekend. So there's two things we have to start to talk about over the weekend to kind of have a better understanding of what's happening and why we are red. So a lot of people might be asking, well, you know, why is this continuing given some of the things you heard over the weekend and some of these things that you probably heard through the grapevine? If you are just tuning in, this was a very, very bullish thing to see, and it lasted for about 5 hours. So Axios reported 4 things. Number 1, Trump's team began talking on how peace talks would look. Number 2, any deal to end the war would include reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Number 3, the U.S. would want Iran to have no missile program for the next 5 years. And number 4, Iranian demands would include a ceasefire and no resumption of the war. This was posted by Axios yesterday at 2:52 p.m. A lot of you guys aren't maybe junkies for the stock market on the weekend, but I am, and maybe some of you guys are. There's a website where you can literally check how the futures will trade when the futures aren't open. That is relatively accurate. It actually gives you the ability to buy and sell on the weekend. Like 24/7 trading is definitely going to happen at some point. But we were up. We were up up about 0.6%. And it looked like, holy crap, like maybe this is the taco. Maybe this is like, all right, Trump's starting to realize we need to have some peace talks. We need to get out of here. We need to end the war. I mean, maybe it's a win if Iran agrees to no missile program over the next 5 years. At least Trump gets to say, look, I stopped them from getting a nuclear weapon over the next 5 years, and we're going in the right direction. And then Mr. Donnie T, 5 hours later, tweets, if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, which was 7:44 yesterday, Eastern Standard Time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then that website that people use to track the weekend futures went straight down. It's becoming comical at this point. Like, you think you have something to give you a little bit of breathing room, and then he comes out and is like, no, like, I'm ready to just bomb the crap out of you guys, and you're gonna have to deal with it. So there are now 20 hours left on this 48-hour warning. I think a little bit less than 20 hours. And so what happens tomorrow if by tomorrow afternoon the Strait of Hormuz is not opened? Does the United States start bombing these power plants, which is not necessarily the oil infrastructure? So it's not really going to, it's not really, I mean, I don't think it would affect the price of oil in and of itself intrinsically. I think it will have an impact on the price of oil just because of the perception of war and the idea that more electric grids going down means that there's more reliance on oil. So yes, it will have an impact on it, but he's not literally bombing the oil infrastructure, but he is bombing power plants that provide electricity to people in Iran, which obviously is going to create a lot of unrest in the street. That might be part of the plan of the White House, trying to create some civil unrest. It's going to create issues. It's not going to be something that is easy to navigate. And now, you know, Trump has an ego, right? So what happens in 20 hours if the Strait of Hormuz isn't opened? Because the one thing we all should know about Trump by now is that he doesn't like to seem like he's wrong. He will never admit that he's wrong. So if he goes back on his threat, obviously if the Iranians basically call his bluff and he looks and he looks bad for not following through on his threat, I mean, like, then he's going to want to follow through on his threat, and this war will escalate, which is why I think it's obvious why VG, Next Decade, LNG, ExxonMobil, Chevron, all those are up right now. All of them are expecting, well, the president just said you have 20 hours left to open the strait, and if you don't, it's bombs away. And so from that perspective, yeah, I don't think Tesla or Meta or Hood or Palantir or Bitcoin are going to be able to hold up easily in terms of the green momentum. Now, maybe there is something that the markets are pricing in, which is why we're not as red. That's why people thought it would be bloody red when the futures open, because of this threat. Maybe the markets are pricing in that there will be some type of deal that happens before this threat officially goes through. S&P 500 right there, 647 in the overnight markets. But that's what we're dealing with right now. And, you know, that's why I think we ended up officially going red. Besant did the Sunday shows this morning. I mean, I think we have more questions than answers, but here's what Besant had to say in terms of trying to resolve all the issues and questions that people had on this war.
Morning, good to have you back. I want to start with the latest of what we're hearing from President Trump. Let me read you what he posted overnight. He says, if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Has the president changed his mind about winding down the war, as he said a day earlier, and instead plans to escalate?
I think he said he could wind the war down at any time he wants. And Kristen, this is the only language the Iranians understand.
But this seems to be an escalation, a threat of escalation, and it seems to run counter to his statement that he, in fact, wants to wind down the war.
Again, Kristen, the president's been very clear from the beginning that the goals are destroy the Iranian Air Force and the Navy, to completely demolish their missile capabilities, demolish their ability to replenish those capabilities, make sure the Iranians cannot have a nuclear weapon, and stop their ability to project power internationally. And the president will take whatever steps it takes to achieve those goals.
Well, you know, I was on the phone with President Trump a week ago. He told me allies were on the way to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. Has the Trump administration abandoned that strategy and now chosen to go it alone?
Again, what we have done, there has been a campaign to using military assets to soften up the Iranian fortifications along the strait. That's going to continue until they are completely demolished. And Kristen, let me tell you, whether it's this network or the mainstream press, the American people do not have good framing what is going on here. If you were to read what is happening, and I'm sure when Senator Murphy is on, you know, he has come out and said, we are losing the war. That is wrong. We have demolished the Iranian capabilities. Their Air Force is completely destroyed, Navy destroyed, and every day we are taking out their missiles, their missile systems, and the factories that build those missiles. And now the General Kane Secretary Hegseth are leading a campaign to destroy all the fortifications along the Straits of Hormuz.
Just to put a fine point on this, though, is the president in the process of winding down this war or escalating the conflict?
Again, they're not mutually exclusive. Sometimes you have to escalate to de-escalate, Chris.
Okay. NBC News is reporting that President Trump is considering sending troops into Iran. Will the administration use troops to secure the Strait of Hormuz or for any other reason, Mr. Secretary?
Again, as President Trump said during the press break yesterday when he was going out to Marine One, he's not going to give away what we're going to do. He's, as President Trump always does, he's leaving all options on the table. We had a very successful bombing campaign against the military installations at Karg Island, the nexus for all the Iranian oil supply. What could happen with Karg Island, we'll see. And again, just to be clear, the command and control system of the Iranian regime is in chaos. This is Hitler's bunker. Hitler is dead. Himmler is dead. Goring is dead. Most of what you're seeing are lone wolf activities. The mid-range ICBM that was shot off, these 2 missiles yesterday, that's out of desperation, Kristen.
Okay, so we're going to listen to about 2 more minutes of it and then we'll be done. But the core thing Besant is saying right there is that the media in this country has not explained what's happening in this war to the American people in a meaningful way. And, some people will agree with that. Some people will disagree with that. But at its core, the Trump administration is coming out and their kind of stance here is that, look, we're winning. We're beating these guys. We needed to do this in order to resolve the nuclear threat, which is kind of the core argument they're going after. And the American people need to recognize that this is not a war anymore. This is a military operation that has resulted in us winning. And now it's ultimately going to lead to it winding down. The problem is the broader question that I think she's asking, which is a fair question, is, well, then why are there reports that we're going to have boots on the ground? And the only thing Besant can say is, which is the same thing that all the other administration officials have said, is, the president has whatever options available to him and he will do whatever he needs to do to go forward. It's not really answering the question that if we are winning and we're done and we've beat them and we've taken out Iran's Hitler, then why are these ideas of the Strait of Hormuz not being open or having to have Navy ships go down or warships or having boots on the ground kind of even being contemplated? Why is that still happening? And I think that's what's confusing a lot of the American people, saying, okay, if we won, then why isn't it done by now? And that's where you get the quote from Besant saying we might have to escalate in order to de-escalate over time. He's going to talk a little bit more about that with the oil prices and try to convince the American people that 50 days of oil prices might be worth 50 years of Iran not having a nuke.
You bring up Karg Island. I want to ask you about your statement. You said it could become a U.S. asset. What exactly does that mean? Could U.S. troops go into Karg Island to secure it?
Again, as I said, all options are on the table.
Okay, so that's a possibility.
All options are on the table.
All right, let me talk about your announcement this past week. On Friday, the Treasury Department lifted sanctions on Iranian oil stored on tankers, a move that would effectively allow Iran to get more than $14 billion of oil revenue. Why is the U.S. helping to fund a country that it's currently at war with, Mr. Secretary?
Again, Kristen, why don't we have good facts here? That Iranian oil was always going to be sold to the Chinese. It was going to be sold at a discount. So which is better, Kristen? Which is better? If oil prices spiked to $150 and they were getting 70% of that, or oil prices below 100, it's better to have them where they are now. And to be clear, we had always planned for this contingency. About 140 million barrels are out on the water. In essence, we are jujitsuing the Iranians. We are using their own oil against them. We have a much better line of sight, to be clear, at Treasury when this oil goes to, if it goes to Indonesia, if it goes to Japan, if it goes to Korea, we have a much better line of sight and are able to block accounts that the oil goes into. When it goes into China, it completely gets recycled. So to be clear, that 14 billion number is grossly overstated.
Let me unpack what you're just saying. First of all, how much is it? And second of all, I don't hear you disputing that Iran will get some of the money.
Iran already gets a huge amount of the money because Iran is the largest sponsor of state terrorism, and China has been funding them.
So it was always part of the plan to unsanction Iranian oil?
Again, we unsanctioned the Russia. At Treasury, we plan for all contingencies. We have break the glass plans, and to be able, this oil is floating out in Asia, and it is mostly our Asian allies. The U.S. gets virtually no oil from the Gulf. We are energy sufficient. So when we unsanction this, rather than the oil going to China, it can go to Japan, it can go to Korea, it can go to Indonesia, it can go to Malaysia.
And it can go to Iran too. I mean, isn't the point that the sanctions were in place to prevent Iran from getting any of the money? They will have access to some of the money now.
Again, Kristen, you're missing the point. So please listen to me. They were getting it from China anyway.
All right, let me talk about the real world.
So, I mean, it's a lot of back and forth, and people will have different interpretations of it. But at its core, I mean, more oil is opening up because we need more supply. So the initial headline of people thinking, oh, the Iranians are going to be getting more oil because that oil was sanctioned. Well, why is the United States opening up the sanctions? Obviously, because we want more supply of oil so that oil prices can go down. The pushback that Bassent's giving is, well, that oil was going to be sold anyway. And it's like, okay, sure, eventually that oil might have been sold, but you definitely sped up the process to unsanction that oil, and the Iranians absolutely are going to get money, even if they were going to get it 10 years from now. They're getting it. They're getting it, the point is, and they're getting it way faster than they were they were going to get it because of the lack of supply that we have in the market. We need more oil. We need more supply to get these prices to come down, especially because all of these refineries in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq have been hit. So, you know, regardless of how you feel about how Bassent's answering it or if it makes sense or not, the point is, economically, we need more oil. And you can't even blame the White House for unsanctioning Iranian oil or even Russian oil that they did 2 weeks ago, even if you politically don't agree with it, because we need more supply. And the IEA 400 million barrels that we release only buys us up to about 15, 17 days of supply before things continue to spike up again. So if this war realistically is not over, or at least we don't increase the oil supply within the next couple of weeks, it's just not going to be good. And when I mean it's not going to be good, I mean oil prices will continue to stay higher. Inflation will obviously go up if oil prices are higher. And as a result of that, growth stocks, which need rate cuts and liquidity and a good macro environment to go up outside of just, you know, their earnings growth, which has been exceptional, they're not going to have the macro backdrop they need to continue going up in a straight line. They might have these momentary bounces, which is what we've been seeing over the past couple of weeks, but like an actual trend, unfortunately, is just not right there. And so given what Bassent said this morning, at least from my perspective, didn't make me any more confident that this war is anytime soon. Obviously, you know, the administration has said the war is ending soon. Israel said on Friday, or I think it was Thursday, Netanyahu had a press conference that they think the war will be ending soon. But then you have all these headlines of, once again, boots potentially coming on the ground, warships going into the Strait of Hormuz. And then you have this Trump tweet about, hey, you got 48 hours. And if you don't open in 48 hours, I'm going to start bombing. Like, that is not anything ending anytime soon. I am curious, at what point does NATO seriously get involved and get the United States or back the United States in helping to open the Strait of Hormuz? Trump called NATO cowards on Friday. The NATO Secretary General didn't really condemn him for saying that.
President seemed to say, though, that this will go beyond Iran in terms of the impact on his thinking about NATO and his willingness to help Europe. Take a listen to this.
I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, you know, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
The president continues to frame this as sort of like a quid pro quo, and he's also mentioned Ukraine in the same context, saying, I help Europe with Ukraine. Why aren't they helping me? Are you worried that this is going to hurt NATO's goals elsewhere?
What I know is that we always come together. It was under President Trump's leadership that we had the extremely successful summit in The Hague, where we agreed to spend 5% of our GDPs on defense, and therefore equalizing for the first time since Eisenhower. Yes. So this is quite some time back in history, equalizing what the Europeans are spending and what the Americans are spending. Not only because it is fair that we all spend the same, and this was a wish from Trump 45, and now it's Trump 47. He got this done, but also because we need it, because of the Russian threat and our other adversaries. Then on Ukraine, it is again the US providing critical intelligence support and a weapons flow, working together with the Europeans to secure Ukraine's fight against the Russians, making sure they have what they need. And now with Iran, I'm absolutely convinced. And I understand the president's frustration that it takes some time. But again, I also ask for some understanding, because nations had to prepare for this, not knowing, and for good reasons, about the initial attack on Iran. But now coming together to make sure that we can be able to secure the Strait of Hormuz.
Basically, he's not confirming or denying that NATO support won't be there meaningfully in order to help open the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, if NATO was ready to help Trump open the Strait of Hormuz, like literally right now, Germany, France, the UK, all these guys would start sending in their ships to help Trump open the Strait of Hormuz. That has not happened yet. And that has not happened because, quite frankly, the prime ministers of these countries have come out and said they do not feel that the action warranted against Iran was necessary. So, you know, you've got sort of, and that's why Trump has been tweeting that NATO is cowards and they don't want to work with us. And like, so that part of the story is also a bit confusing in terms of how that's going to play out, because the United States could go themselves and try to open up the Strait of Hormuz, but it's going to be very confrontational. And it's going to, once again, accelerate the perception of the war, which is not going to be good for oil prices. The United States would want to go with a lot of allies, especially if Iran has their own allies that are helping them. And, you know, the United States is not really seeing that support yet. So from that part of this puzzle, from that piece of the puzzle, you're not really seeing the ability for that to happen or accelerate anytime soon, which would delay the spike in oil. And then based on what Besant is saying around increasing the supply by desanctioning Russian and Iranian oil, that's also not necessarily helping stop the war anytime soon, because Iran is obviously getting a ton of money from the desanctioning of that. So is Russia. Russia has been sharing intel with Iran that has been widely reported. In fact, on Friday, Politico reported that Putin called Trump and said, "I will stop helping Iran if you stop helping Ukraine." And Trump was like, no. The fact that that call happened and the fact that Putin tried to bargain that way just goes to show how much of a mess this has all become, and that now Ukraine is being used as a negotiating chip for the first war that was supposed to end last year in order to stop this new war. So, I mean, once again, it is just very confusing to try to navigate how this is all playing out, but the trend is likely not to the upside, at least in the current moment, given the type of volatility around oil that we're not seeing. And then, you know, the worst thing about this is that this came out over the weekend. The bond market is now pricing in inflation expectations. Are you guys ready for this? 5.3% over the next 12 months, which is why the 10-year is jumping up at that 4.4 level. I mean, we were really close to killing inflation. Like, even with the tariff nonsense, we were really close to killing inflation. At this point, if we get back to 5.3, I don't know how to come out and say it's all bullish, because 5.3 inflation means the federal funds rate is about what? 250 basis points below this. We're at what, 3.5? So I don't think we're going to get to 5.3. I hope, because I think this thing will end sooner than later. Like, the optimist in me wants to say, yeah, like, we're not going to get to 5.5% inflation. But we just had a 3.9% print on PPI core. If oil continues to stay here, it's going to take months, not weeks, not days, literal months for that to work its way through the system. It took about a year and a half from 2023 till the end of 2024 to finally start seeing that progress. And you're seeing this in the rate cut probabilities. Kevin Warsh, I don't know what he's going to be able to do to get people to vote for a cut, but now there's a 12% chance, 12% in the next meeting, that we're going to hike. VG hitting 1662 in the overnight markets, which makes sense. It should be going up based on these oil prices. And the rate cut is completely priced out for 2026 at this point. So I think now the question becomes, okay, it feels really ugly. It likely will continue to be a bit ugly, but that's exactly how we all felt back in April of last year. Almost around the same time frame, a couple weeks from that time frame of 2025. Fear and greed is at 15. We saw fear and greed go to 4 during that time. Like, do we need another 5% on the S&P for it to start being an obvious buy? Or is this the obvious buy? And once again, my thoughts on this are, based on after everything I read over the weekend, very consistent with what I said on Friday. It is very difficult to call the bottom. And I don't know who's calling the bottom here, because if you're calling the bottom here, then you are really sticking your neck out and saying, yep, this thing's going to end and we're going to V-shape. And no one even did that during Liberation Day. I mean, retail showed with their actions they didn't believe that the market would stay as low as it was. But it's not necessarily the same situation in terms of how that V-shape happened, given obviously this is a war. This is not a policy proposal that can be changed from a tweet. And so do you have that sort of spike down and then spike back up type of bottoming process that easily allows us to get above those 200-day moving averages? We have definitively lost all of the moving averages on the Qs. I mean, IWM is now red. The S&P 500, obviously the Dow Jones is not at 50,000 anymore. I don't know how anyone could be calling a bottom realistic. I really don't know. The only way I think that could happen is if you have some realistic glimmer of hope that the war is going to end and not just an Axios headline anymore. Like you have something real come from Trump saying the war is over. And the problem is it's now the boy who cried wolf, because every day he tells a different reporter that the war is going to end soon and the market spike for a couple of seconds. And then the markets get another headline of, oh, we're sending more warships. Oh, Trump is threatening 48 hours before he starts bombing the Karg Island. Like, yeah, we're probably not bottoming. At least not at the moment. A rate hike could be Powell giving the final FU to Trump. Yeah, it could. And quite frankly, you know, they're not going to be that crazy if they start talking about it, because if inflation goes up, what else do they have to their ability to try to cut? I mean, maybe they can rely on the labor market going down, but they definitely can't cut to save the labor market, because they would want people to lose their jobs, so that would be the natural hedge against inflation coming down. But they're going to start thinking about hiking. And I think Trump would lose his mind, but also Trump would have to somewhat reconcile with the fact that, yeah, if oil's up, you know, they're going to have to do what they have to do. So what does that mean for the broader equity markets and, you know, personal investing philosophy? Again, I'll say what I said on Friday. I do not think this means run for the hills and go to straight cash. I think if you try to do that, then you are obviously waiting for a legit bottom to try to get back into the market. It's very hard to do that. It's not easy to do that. However, I also think that doesn't mean that if you have a ton of cash on the sidelines, you just throw all of it into the market at this moment. It's just really hard to do that. I really agree with the philosophy of letting things settle, waiting until some moving averages have been achieved again, and then going in. So you might have to pay 15, 10% more than you're paying right now, but at least you have confirmation, versus buying and then you go down 15, 10% when it was obviously not the right time to go in. It's always obvious in hindsight, but giving it a little bit of time makes it less obvious. And the covered call, again, continues to be one of my favorite strategies, but at its core, there is no sign that we are bottoming yet. And if anyone has a sign, I would love to know in the comments. If anyone has any kind of signals they've been looking at, like genuinely, I'm looking for. Look, I'll put up some of the charts that I was going to go through. Current U.S. equity valuations maybe could signal a little bit of relief. The good thing is we're down so much that, you know, maybe we don't have to go down that much further, although obviously we are still trading above the median average. So if you look at the NASDAQ 100, Russell, S&P equal weight, and then the S&P mid-cap 400s, that gray dash right there is the 20-year median, and then this is the current. We are above on all of these indices except the mid-caps and the Russell 2000s. They are basically right at the median, but the things that we care about, the S&P and the NASDAQ, are still well above the median range. So you can't easily say, all right, the valuations definitely are unbelievably undervalued. Now, some of these names, obviously in NVIDIA, Meta, I think these names are cheap, but you know, if the market falls, they're going down. It's just, they're going down. Like, it's as bullish as I am on all these names. If the S&P goes down, these names are going down with it, given they, you know, comprise the majority of the S&P. And then you have this chart, which maybe is theoretically kind of bullish. You're seeing extreme bearishness in the AAII surveys. 52% of individual investors expressed bearish sentiment over the next 6 months in the AAII survey for the week ending March 19th. The bearish sentiment has risen 23 percentage points since early February, the largest increase since February 2025. Meanwhile, just 30% of retail investors were bullish over the last week, the third lowest reading since May of 2025. We also looked at the NAIM Investor Exposure Index, which is now at 69. It was at 92 back in Q4, which is just an index to quantify how much actual institutional exposure there is in the equity markets. S&P, by the way, officially down 1% overnight. No, 0.5%, still down 0.5%. 645. We did take out that 646 level, and we definitely took out the Friday lows in the overnight markets. So maybe everyone is so bearish that it makes it a reason to go bullish, but then again, that usually works when the macro backdrop is decent. If the macro backdrop is bad, it's hard to just be like, well, everyone's bearish, so I should be bullish. If oil keeps going up, then maybe we don't have to go down further than where we're down, but we're definitely not going up as easily given the pain that we're seeing. And then these are the Magnificent Seven returns. If you look at that 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, and 12 month versus year to date, it's performing negative 3.22% worse than the S&P 500, which is obviously, not the best given the Mag 7 are comprising the majority of the S&P 500. So the point is, I want to be optimistic. I want to say everything's going to be okay. I naturally am more bullish than not. But again, every little bounce gets faded. So far, every downturn got to bounce back up to where we started from going down, except in the past 5 days. In the past 5 days, usually we would bounce off 670. And then we would bounce off 675. Over the past week, we lost 670. Then we started bouncing off 665. Then we lost 660. Then we were kind of holding 655. And then Friday, that boots on the ground report came out. And then we completely lost 650. And so now it's like, do we lose 640? Do we lose 630? I'm talking about the S&P. Do we lose 620? Do we just head all the way back down to 6,000 and have to start fresh? And then we need the official taco and then have a 10% rally intraday like happened in April? Or is this going to be an annoying, slow bleed to the downside? I don't know. But as of now, it's hard to theorize on it going to the upside. S&P 500 right there down 0.44%, 645.74 in the overnight markets. We're going to fill the April gap. I have heard a lot of TA over the weekend of people saying that exact same thing, which very well is possible. We'll have Jason on for TT this Tuesday. He thinks 58.50 is the target on the S&P, which would be about 15% down from here. I mean, if it happens, it happens. And I guess we're going to have to navigate that. Farzad, thank you for the $6.90 super chat. Deeply appreciated. Admit you look so handsome. What an upgrade. Thank you, Farzad. Means a lot. Hopefully, Farzad will be at our Austin meetup in November, which, by the way, the website is now working. It's called akmedia.news. This will change over time. This was just the early draft of it. And again, Claude did this in an hour. There's your schedule for the investor meetups. You can RSVP from there. It has previous meetups and all the photos. It has all my interviews, has the VC stuff people have been asking about, how to connect. I know it's super basic, but the point is it was done in an hour. And even this graphic, right? These are my investments. I said, hey, Claude, these are the 5, can you guys see this? Oh, see this right here. These are the 5 startups I've invested in. And even the boxes and the design, the fact that it glows, the fact that it says what percentage I'm up on the investments. I didn't tell it to do any of that. I just gave it the data. I didn't even give it a description of these startups. And it figured out what Autopilot is, what Eptronic is, what FOMO is, and wrote the descriptions itself. It was pretty freaking cool. And so, yeah, this will be what everyone can use now. But shout out to Claude. All of it at the end of the day goes back to NVIDIA. Oh, I should have called it currently right now. I called it akmedia.news. It should be, damn, that would have made more sense, currently right now. But then again, not a lot of people know what that is, but we're going to incorporate that into the website somehow. We'll get a CRN up there in some way. So anyway, look, the oil is where we're going to transition to the Tesla stuff. Ironically, now that I saw Farzad's super chat, it reminds me we got to talk about Tesla and the Terafab stuff. But the oil stuff is not getting better. It's not necessarily getting worse yet because we haven't seen a massive spike back to the highs of 120. But given Trump's threats about wanting to, bomb power plants, given the Strait of Hormuz still being shut, given the Kuwait, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia refineries being hit over the past 2 weeks, it's just not looking like it's going to necessarily be in the best situation. As Bitcoin dumps, as I'm saying this, Bitcoin losing about 500 points right there. The Nikkei continuing to go down as well in Japan. Remember that yen carry trade is still a real thing. If the yen ends up spiking and we don't get that under control, people will start selling off tech stocks to cover the short on their yen. Wow, the Nikkei now down 5%. It was down 3, now it's down 5. So you got the entirety of Japan right there taking a hit as well. And so I think the big question, guys, is going to be, do the American people support this or not? Are the American, because at the end of the day, Trump is going to be at the will of the political acceptance for this war continuing. This is not 2003 where there was 90% support to go into Iraq after 9/11. This is something where I think there's a lot more confusion for the American people than not. And at the end of the day, if Trump still cares about the midterms, he's going to have to make a decision on, do the midterms matter? And do I want to claim victory and spend the next 7 months trying to convince people why I did what I did? Or do I want to let this continue? And I hope by the midterms that it's resolved and people feel the American safety that has now been disseminated across the world by getting rid of the Iranian regime. And do I have to put boots on the ground to get rid of that regime? I mean, these are questions that do not have easy answers. And I think Trump is trying to chalk it up as if it's just going to end anytime soon. But obviously the markets are not buying into that right now. And unfortunately, that's why we're feeling a lot of pain. There's a massive blackout in Tehran. Yeah, so Israel and Iran have exchanged a lot of missiles over the weekend. Some of these videos that I'm seeing in Israel in particular, they're pretty bad, dude. They're pretty bad. I mean, Iran is striking them pretty damn hard, and vice versa with Israel and Tehran. So, you know, when you get back to the humanity of the fact that there is a actual war happening and people are dying, like, it's obviously not good. It's not something I think people want to see continue. And, you know, the question becomes, when is Trump going to decide that enough is enough and we're moving forward? But it is still ugly, and it doesn't seem like that is ending anytime soon. We'll get a couple more war updates before the show ends, but let's transition to Tesla. So I'll just let Elon start talking because I'm really confused, but I'm curious what people have to say. Let's watch a couple clips, and then I'm curious what you guys have to say on, do you guys believe Elon with the plan that he's laid out over the weekend?
And we're starting off with an advanced technology fab here in Austin. And I believe Governor Abbott is in the audience. I'd like to thank Governor Abbott and the state of Texas for the support. All right. So in the advanced technology fab, we will have all of the equipment necessary to make a chip of any kind, logical memory, and we will also have all of the equipment necessary to make the lithography masks. So in a single building, we can create a lithography mask, make the chip, test the chip, make another mask, and have an incredibly fast recursive loop for improving the chip design. To the best of my knowledge, this doesn't exist anywhere in the world, where you've got everything necessary to build logic, memory, and do packaging, and test it, and then do the masks, improve the masks, and just keep looping it. So, and we're not just going to do conventional compute in this. I think there's some very interesting new physics that is potentially, that I'm confident will work. It's just a question of when. So this is we're really going to push the limit of physics in compute. And we're going to try a bunch of wild and crazy things, which you can do if you've got that fast iteration loop. That I can't emphasize enough the importance of being able to make a chip, test it, and then change the design, do another one, and have that in a single building. I think that our recursive improvement with that situation is probably an order of magnitude better than anything else in the world.
Okay, so Elon is basically saying that this is the current available new compute, around 50 gigawatts. Tesla and SpaceX alone need a terawatt, which is about 1,000 gigawatts of compute. And so the whole point of the Terafab and this announcement that Elon put out over the weekend, it was like this random, like, hey, I'm going live at 8 p.m. and we're going to talk about this. It's him basically saying we're going to be Micron, we're going to be ASML, we're going to be NVIDIA, we're going to be Amkor, we're going to take the entire supply chain ecosystem and we're going to do it by ourselves. Lithography, packaging, design, everything. And, you know, it's a very ambitious goal that Elon's talking about. By the way, to me, it makes the Tesla SpaceX merger inevitable. Like, I can't imagine that not happening, especially even these charts are talking about Tesla and SpaceX together. And then you can take a look at this graphic right here about the different chips that Elon is talking about here. A lot of this goes down to data centers in space as well. But that's the vision that Elon pointed out over the weekend. If that is true, obviously it's not going to happen overnight. And obviously there's going to need to be a lot of NVIDIA compute that is bought before Elon can kind of build his own ecosystem of chips internally inside of the entire supply chain. But I mean, he's talking about essentially taking multiple multi-hundred billion and then multiple multi-trillion dollar companies and putting them all within one ecosystem to build this terawatt of compute that is needed for Tesla and SpaceX alone. He's not talking about Amazon and Meta. He's talking about just Tesla and SpaceX need all of this together. My perspective here is I'm a little skeptical that this can easily happen. I also think the SpaceX IPO is coming up and Elon is trying to paint a very big story. By the way, Jensen does this as well. You know, when Jensen was at GTC talking about all the compute and everything that's going to be needed, he's obviously talking his book. But of course, if you think you need a terawatt of compute, which will take, you know, rough math, at least a couple trillion to be able to create in and of itself, the ROI on that, Elon, I would imagine, thinks is at least 5 to 10x. And if that is all going to happen within this conglomerate that is SpaceX, which inevitably will probably have Tesla merge into it, I mean, why wouldn't you buy SpaceX then, right? Like, it's kind of a story of like, if we need that much compute and it's going to be that big and that important and that expansive just for these two companies alone, then there's a reason for why SpaceX could be very exciting. The lithography bit, Farzad said, is easily the biggest bottleneck. Those machines are beyond insane. If they are really going to make their own machine, it's going to be absolutely bonkers. And that's another reason why, again, there's a bit of skepticism that I think people are healthily deploying here. From my understanding, ASML only makes 70 of their lithography machines a year. And it costs them like $300 to $400 million to make one of those machines. Might be a little off on the numbers, but I think that's the rough ballpark. For Tesla, I mean, that's why ASML has a moat. For Tesla to replicate that, for them to replicate what Micron's doing, for them to obviously replicate what NVIDIA is doing with the GPUs, it would be quite incredible. But it's also one of the most optimistic versions of why you would trust in the Elon empire, why he thinks he can get that $1 trillion payday. And I think the takeaway, outside of whether you believe Elon or not, is that the world needs more compute. And obviously there are companies that seem extremely undervalued for all the compute that is needed long term.
It's very difficult for humans. So to accomplish this very difficult goal really requires a combination of efforts of SpaceX, xAI, and Tesla working together.
That to me sounds like a merger. I mean, that obviously sounds like an inevitable merger. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but it feels like that's going to happen.
To create this epic terafab project. So. And you know, Tesla and xAI and SpaceX have all done amazing things that people did not think would be done before. So there's the Giga Texas fab here. There's the Optimus robot that's being built. There's a global supercharging network. Just really quite a lot. And it wasn't that long ago when people thought electric cars wouldn't amount to anything. And there were basically no electric cars for sale when Tesla started. And people said it was impossible, and now Tesla's making 2 million electric cars a year. Yeah. And then xAI, although it's a new company, now part of SpaceX, has also built the first gigawatt scale compute cluster, which in record time. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA said he'd never seen anything built so fast in his life before. So a great compliment from NVIDIA. And then
So that's what you got with Elon over the weekend. I'm going to do a poll right now and see kind of what the temperature is on how people believe him or not. And again, you know, this is Elon. He's always going to have ambitious goals, always going to have ambitious ideas. It's the reason he is who he is. It's the reason why Tesla has been able to survive in the midst of all the skeptics over the past 20 years. But the question becomes for investors, like, if he's serious about a terawatt of compute, I mean, well, what are we talking about when we get bearish here? Like, we can be bearish because of the oil and the war and all that stuff. And like, that's inevitably, yeah, you're going to have to go a little bearish when that stuff happens. And you can't expect things to move up, but the trend is up. The trend is up on the idea of the productivity, efficiency, and overall new products that we can create via AI. If SpaceX and Tesla alone need a terawatt, let's say they don't need a terawatt. Let's say it's only 100 gigawatts, which is still mind-blowing numbers, right? Like, Or he's talking about 1,000 gigawatts. Even if you get to 1/10 of that, even if you get to 5% of that, that is massive, massive, massive levels of compute, massive amount of CapEx. And once again, it just seems like that cycle is not ending anytime soon. And that's also what Jensen said over the weekend when he was on the All-In podcast.
So if you look at the consensus forecast, you said compute could 1 million X, right? And yet they have you growing next year at 30%, the year after that at 20%, and in 2029, which is supposed to be a monster year, at 7%, right? So if you take your TAM and you apply their growth numbers, it suggests that your share will plummet. Do you see anything in your future order book that would make that correct?
Yeah, first of all, they just don't understand the scale and the breadth of AI.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
Most people think that AI is in the top 5 hyperscalers.
Right.
That's right. There's also an orthodoxy around these law of large numbers where, they have to go back to their investment banking risk committee and show some model. They're not going to believe in their minds that 5 trillion goes to 15 trillion. They're like,
out of the bounds.
it can go to 7.
Or they could have a $10 trillion company.
It's all just CYA stuff that I think
it's never happened before, so you can't say it will.
And because you have to redefine what it is that you do. There was somebody who made an observation recently that NVIDIA, Jensen, how can you be larger than Intel in servers? And the reason for that is because the CPU market of the entire data center was about $25 billion a year.
Right.
We do $25 billion a year, as you guys know, in the time that we were sitting here. And so obviously, that was a joke.
No, it's
all in podcast.
It's roughly true. Don't worry, everything on the show is roughly true.
Don't worry about it. It's all in.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean,
But anyways, that was not guidance. But anyhow, the point is how big you can be depends on what is it that you make.
Right.
NVIDIA is not making chips. Number one, making chips does not help you solve the AI infrastructure problem anymore. It's too complicated. Number three, most people think that AI is narrowly in the things that they talk about and hear and see.
Right.
OpenAI is incredible. They're going to be enormous. Anthropic is incredible. They're going to be enormous. But AI is going to be much, much bigger than that.
For those that don't know, NVIDIA and Intel have had beef for the past 20 years. Intel literally tried to kill NVIDIA and get them out of business so many times. And obviously now Jensen is literally having to save Intel by investing in them. So it makes sense that he's throwing some of those shots right there. But the Jensen's broader point is that AI is not Anthropic or OpenAI. It is much bigger than we can even understand. I posted a video a couple hours ago. People can watch it later. I interviewed 2 of the NVIDIA executives. One was in healthcare. One was in product management, particularly around NemoClaw. And, like when you listen to those executives talk about what they're seeing on the floor with AI as the S&P 500 hits a new low in the overnight market, 645.19. Once again, I don't think anyone's doubting per se that it's going to be it's going to be orders of magnitude bigger than what it is today. I think a lot of people are skeptical on how we get there, if the CapEx will continue, and if the productivity gains will be realized. But I mean, if you assume it is going to be better than what it is today in terms of the quality of the product, and then obviously the CapEx infrastructure investments that's necessary to be able to get it to be better than what it is today. And then you look at Elon talking about a terawatt of compute. I mean, obviously Meta, Google, these guys probably don't need a terawatt, but they definitely want more compute. If Elon is going to try to get a terawatt, like all these guys are competing with each other, that means that this story is continuing. But we have a war in the middle of trying to get the market to care about this story. Gold is now below the local top in October. Gold prices are, 43.41, 5% down on gold. Nvidia is also down. Silver is down 5% at 66. Palantir just went red. Hood is 2.2% down. Nebius 2.7. Meta's lost 590, folks. 588 on Meta. SoFi is down. PayPal is down. DraftKings down. This is why I went off on Kalshi's valuation on Friday. How the hell is Hood, SoFi, Affirm, Coinbase all going down 2-3% every day, but Kalshi gets a $22 billion valuation? Like, I really don't like the valuations in the private markets. It all feels fake. And I hope the public markets recover before those companies go public so that they don't have to feel the extent of how fake they are. But none of it's real. Like, you cannot have companies that are executing and growing at 40-50% trading down at these levels and expect the private markets to reward those other companies if they end up going public. So the Stripes of the world, I mean, all these names, it's a bit scary to even want them to go public right now. Zeta's down 2%, Reddit's down 1.2%, gold and silver still coming down. Where does the gold money move to? That's a great question. I'll tell you what, it's not going into equities right now. It's not going into the bond market because the 10-year continues to spike, so you don't have people buying bonds, which creates an inverse relationship to yields coming down. Where is it going to? Well, there's something called money market funds. 38 billion increased in money market funds last week, 7.86 trillion. I think we will see this number go up. And the reason for that is because if the Fed is officially not cutting rates, then why wouldn't you keep your money getting 3.5% risk-free? And if you put it into the municipal bonds, I mean, some of them can be tax-free. So, yeah, I understand why cash is going to the sidelines here. Now, maybe some of that cash is going to buy the dip, but obviously we need the markets to kind of recover to see if that thesis ends up playing out. VG 17 overnight, 17.24. You're not going to see it on Webull, but I'm seeing it on Robinhood. Well, I can just show that right there. VG 8.6% up. I can't see the order book overnight. The volume is obviously low. Now, again, just please remember, if you FOMO into this, if Trump says anything yesterday that gets oil to tank, natural gas to tank, VG will go right down. It's done this literally every single day of last week. So you just have to be a bit careful. But if you're holding on for the long term and you bought and you're just chilling, then it's a hedge right now because your longs are probably getting hit, but your VGs, your next decades, your Chevrons, your Exxons are up 30% this year. They're holding up. My savings account gets 3% risk-free. Yeah, I mean, people might leave money in their savings accounts, right? Or their high-yield checkings accounts. It's not crazy to imagine that money just stays there if he doesn't want to take a risk in the equity markets. Israel air raid sirens in the eastern sector of the border with Lebanon after detecting missiles. All right, so you've got more missiles that Israel's detecting. There were tons of missiles on Friday. You had multiple air sirens earlier in the day. I mean, that stuff does not seem like it's necessarily slowing down either. Wow, the Korean market's also feeling it. Kospi down 5%, folks. That means your Samsungs and your SK Hynix are going to be down today. So we have Japan down 6, Samsung's down 5 right now. Korea is down 6. SK Hynix, Hood is down 3%. SK Hynix is also down 6. That means Micron, SanDisk, the memory guys probably aren't set up for the best day. Kospi was halted. Really? Is it still halted? I'll check if it's still halted. Yeah, it makes sense. Dude, they went through like 3 circuit breakers in a row last week. VG 1744. 10.3%. 10.3% now, green on the day. It's ugly, guys. It's ugly, and it obviously continues to be ugly. There was a little bit of hope before the futures that it wouldn't be as bad as people thought, and we actually flipped green before I went live, and then we ended up going right back red. 6:45:18. I just want to know when this pain has a chance to end, and obviously it doesn't seem likely, so you just hold on, right? Like, I mean, what else, unless you want to time it and get out of it, or obviously we talked about buying puts, but the put premiums are so high that buying puts right now doesn't really feel like the most strategic thing to do when one tweet can change everything. But we need like a real tweet, not like a fake, it's going to end soon. We need like a no, we negotiated a deal, it's ending soon. And again, Axios reported on Saturday that Trump is getting ready to try to get things together to end this soon. And then you get that Trump tweet that just goes right against that. And by the way, I don't think Axios is making this shit up. I think this is my theory. I think there are certain officials in the administration that want this shit to end, and they are leaking these ideas of conversations they're having with Trump to news reporters. There's no other way these reporters are getting these very specific details on timelines and specific numbers of the years that people want to put into these timelines to get these answers. But you probably have some people in the Trump administration that are just getting tired of this shit. And the only way they can get the media to recognize that there might be an end to this is by putting pressure, by leaking these details. And as soon as that happens, it feels like Trump gets pissed off because he doesn't want it to get leaked. And then he says something that's crazy. And then boom, we're right back down going red. And it feels like that's the game that has been played over the past couple of weeks. Does the pain end when the new Fed starts? I don't know if Kevin Warsh is going to be enough to resolve this. I mean, remember, guys, if Kevin Warsh joins and oil has stayed at 90 for at least 2 months, which he's supposed to join in May, May is very, I mean, we have April and then May. March is almost done. March inflation print is going to be disgusting. Forget about it. April, unless this war ends soon, is going to be a continuation of that disgustingness. So then when Kevin Warsh joins in May, which, by the way, we don't even know if he's going to join in May because Jay Powell said he's not going to leave while he's under this probe by the DOJ, which brings up a whole other question of what the hell's going to happen. I mean, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly, at least in the context of inflation going up if oil stays up. And even if oil doesn't stay up, we have at least another month or 2 months of bad inflation prints because of how much oil has been up in March. So what is Kevin Warsh going to be able to do about it? I don't know. I bought in the money puts when the Qs were at 585 and they played out well. As long as you truly view them as a hedge and not something you're trying to make money on, you're good. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, if you're buying puts as a pure hedge, then you have to be okay with, your longs going up and your hedges going to zero, or your longs getting hit and your hedges reflecting at least somewhat of a counterbalance to those longs. But, for people that are buying like $5,000 S&P 500 puts for Jan 2027, those premiums are high because they were a lot cheaper before the S&P fell 7%. And, you have to get a significant move down for those puts to start like generating any meaningful alpha, especially if you're going out into the future. And if you're buying, weekly puts, that's just a different game, but a lot of that could be burning money on fire because you just might have no idea what ends up happening with the thing that you're buying puts on, which is obviously the logic of a hedge at the end of the day. S&P now 644.95. But the market's definitely buying puts given the put skew ratio that we've seen, and I don't know. Who could blame them? Who could blame them? Kevin Warsh is going to raise rates. Dude, if Kevin Warsh comes in and has no problem with raising rates, I just wonder how Trump is going to react to that. Like, I really wonder if Trump is even going to blame him because, Trump kind of talked about this in the White House the other day. He was like, we had the best economy. Everything was good. Oil prices were low. And we had to get into a little excursion. He keeps calling it a little excursion. And it's almost like he was reminiscing on 3 weeks ago when everything was perfect, which, look, everything wasn't perfect. We have a lot of issues in the labor market, but like oil was down and the S&P was teetering around 690. I mean, things were not necessarily horrible. Now the market's down, bad for 401ks. Oil's up, bad for everything. Sentiment is like, well, why are we paying extra for Iranian freedom when most people don't really understand the reason we're at war in the first place? And you're just in a bit of a more difficult situation, especially as refineries keep getting hit every single week. Wow, Taiwan's down 3.2% now. There you go. Taiwan 2.79. Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. I mean, the United States is the only one that hasn't really seen a 1% drop yet. Are we going to get into Black Monday? Oh my gosh. People have been calling Black Monday for like the past 2 years. Every time something ugly happened, and it didn't happen. Like the last time we got a legit Black Monday was when the S&P fell to 4,800, remember? Like on, I think it was April 8th. That was like the extent of Liberation Day, but it flipped intraday. Like then Trump said something, and then I think that was the day Trump said it's a good time to buy. It was either that Monday or Tuesday, but like the point is that pain of a Black Monday lasted very quickly, and then we moved on. I wonder, maybe do we have to experience more of that before we get there? What would be a Black Monday? That would be like what, 5% down in a day? The actual, how much did the S&P fall on Black Monday? That was like 11%, right, in 1987? Oh shit, it was 20%. Okay, no, we're not getting that, all right? We're not getting 20% down in a day. Right? Right? Like, we're not getting that. That's a little, right? I mean, we're not, come on. That's 20. I don't even want to calculate how bad that is. in a day. That's like below 5,500. The stocks can't just keep going down, right? Like at some point, there's got to be some point, right, where they stop going down. Like ask SMCI. It's like, well, 40% down. Look, in all seriousness, I don't think we get like a 20% down day, but obviously it's ugly. And I talked to a bunch of people over the weekend, not investor people, but people that obviously do invest, but they're not like full time looking at the stock market. But I was talking to just a bunch of different people that I know, and the biggest thing they told me, and I think this is very similar, and I'm sure people that you've individually talked to, your friends or family, might be saying the same thing. The biggest concern I'm getting from the average American who's looking at all this stuff and has a job and has a family, kids, all that stuff, is they just felt like it was unnecessary. They just felt like this whole Iran thing was unnecessary. Now, maybe they're not the most educated on what's going on with nuclear war. Maybe they're not the most educated on what's happening in terms of the liberation of the Iranian people. But that's really not their fault. That's the administration's fault on not communicating effectively why this is happening, why we're doing this. And as a result, you have a lot of people that have invested a lot of money in the stock market, or normal working class people, but they're just like, why? Like, why are we doing this? What's the reason for it? And I think that's a very logical question for people to ask. If you're not obsessing all day looking at every single news update and every little word that Marco Rubio says, you're allowed to ask the question, why is my country going to war? And what am I getting out of it as an American citizen? And it's up to Bessent and Rubio and Trump and all these people to communicate effectively why it's happening. And, until that's effectively communicated, I think people are going to continue to be confused on why this is playing out. Mick says we should have collaborated with more allies first. I go back to that freaking video Trump posted at 12 a.m. where he's telling the Iranian people to take over their capital. This is the first time in generations. I'm the only president who's giving you a chance. It was surreal listening to him say that. And 3 weeks later, we're still in the midst of this with, I don't really know what progress we've done other than hurt their military, which to the United States' credit, yes, we've severely hurt the Iranian military. But if it hasn't resulted in regime change, and it damn sure hasn't resulted in the Strait of Hormuz opening, then what's the point, right? And again, I think that's a very logical question for an American citizen to ask, and they should be getting an answer. Bessent said the whole 50 years for 50 days of higher prices, and maybe that's the extent of the answer we're going to get. But you can't blame people for being confused. And then you got the private credit stuff that I didn't spend a lot of time over the weekend researching that stuff because I had enough stuff to deal with. But the private is not pretty and brings up more questions than answers on what the hell is happening with loans that are going default, particularly for software companies in private credit and private equity. And I don't know. It's scary to see how that plays out. This is what Bessent had to say about oil and holding on for the ride.
Consumers. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby is now planning, he says, to cut flights and is planning for oil to go as high as $175 a barrel, with prices potentially staying above $100 a barrel through 2027. This is according to him. All of this could potentially mean higher prices for consumers. What do you say to Americans who feel they were promised lower costs and now they're getting the opposite?
Kristen, I think the American people understand that in any 50, I'm not going to put a time on it, but let's just pick 50 days of temporary elevated prices. Prices will come off on the other side for 50 years of not having an Iranian regime with a nuclear weapon. The American people, are beginning to understand, thanks to President Trump, that there is no prosperity without security.
I heard you say 50 days. Are you saying that prices could start to come down?
No.
What's the time frame?
I was just picking a point. I don't know whether it's going to be 30 days. I don't know whether it's going to be 50 days. I don't know whether it's going to be 100 days. But to have 50 years, peace in the Middle East, and know that the Iranian regime is defanged. Because, Kristen, what we had before was the illusion of security. Imagine this regime, if they had had another year or 2 years to build out their missile capabilities, they would have built a shield around themselves, and it would have been impossible to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon.
All right. I want to ask you on a different topic about a post by President Trump.
So that is Bessent's argument. His argument is, hey, we needed to protect the American people. If we didn't do this right now, Iran would be set up with a nuclear weapon for the next 50 years. And we are delaying their process heavily, and oil prices are the price to pay. Maybe that is enough for the American people to understand, but maybe it's not. And time will tell how much the American people are ready to deal with that line of logic. Polymarket, 10 new accounts bet on $160,000 for a ceasefire by 3/31. That's March 31st. That would be at the end of next week. If there was any moment where I was hoping for the insiders on Polymarket to be right, it would be now. Please let them be right about a ceasefire in 8 days. I mean, I don't care how much money they make off the inside knowledge. Again, you can't even do anything. Polymarket's a crypto platform, so like there's no regulations on it. But I just hope they're right. 160 grand's not that much, though. 160 grand is, if it was like $1 million, that'd be a little different. 160 grand is a lot, but it's not crazy. Saudi Aramco cuts crude oil supply to Asian buyers for loading in April. Saudi Aramco notifies at least 2 Asian buyers that they can lift only Arab light crude, from the Yanbu terminal in April. That's probably why Kospi is getting hit. Kospi and a lot of the other Asian parts of the world need that oil. Obviously, Taiwan and Japan both down 5% on the day. So, I mean, that makes sense. Aramco making the argument that, hey, we cannot supply the amount of oil that we're supposed to supply. This war will last 10 years. Okay, I don't think it'll last 10 years. I think it'll hopefully be another 10 weeks, and that's it. But, Trump said 4 weeks 2 weeks ago. So he's got 2 weeks left for this thing to end up being 4 weeks. I mean, theoretically, I could see him sign a ceasefire in 2 weeks and just get this over with and taco, which is why, again, you can't get too bearish here. Like, as ugly as it feels, we've been through this story a jillion times with Trump. Every time things really get bad and the markets really start falling and he starts to realize he's losing the media, losing people, he just tacos and move on. Now, you can't easily taco out of this, but you can definitely announce the end of the war and then figure out what the framework is to move on. And that's all the market needs to price in the amount of pain that we had, which allows us to then maybe not V-shape, but at least move forward. And we move on with our lives. So I really don't think this is the time to get that bearish, especially, when we're down 7% already. But if Trump keeps putting out these freaking threats of, hey, you have 48 hours before I do X, Y, Z, obviously people are not going to be happy about it. What do we really think by tomorrow around this time, Trump's going to start bombing the power plants? Or in his words, obliterating? Because if he doesn't, then no one's going to take him seriously. Then these words are just they're empty threats. And I don't think he wants to be seen as the president with empty threats. But I also think there's a world where he tries to come up with a deal to open up the Strait of Hormuz in 20 hours instead of having to bomb the power plants. I also don't think bombing the power plants is going to incentivize the Iranians to open up the Strait. That's just going to piss them off even more. The Iranians, I don't think they care that much if people are going to be stuck in their homes with no electricity. The regime has already shown you how much they care about innocent people. So, he's kind of impulsive. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. What about Cuba? My dad asked me about Cuba. My dad this weekend was like, so what are we doing with Cuba? I'm like, Dad, I don't know. I don't know what the hell we're doing with Cuba. He's like, are we just going to take it? I was like, I don't think so. He's like, but Trump said he's going to take it. I'm like, I know. He said that. He says a lot of things. My dad was so confused, bro. Because my dad didn't see me in a week. And he was just like, bro, what is happening? Can you just, I'm trying to listen to this shit every day. But what is happening? And I'm like, I don't even know, Dad. He's like, don't you pay attention to it all day? I'm like, I don't even know where to start to try to explain what's happening. I not in my wildest dreams did I think 2026 would start off with a war with Iran, bro. Maybe I wasn't reading enough geopolitics to come to grips with that. But it's ugly. It's absolutely ugly. When everything was at all-time highs, everyone wanted huge pullbacks. So what's the problem now? Well, look, I think it's a different frame of reference. I think when everything was at all-time highs, we got a pretty ugly pullback, and that was November. And since November, we haven't, I mean, now we're down, but we basically stayed flat for like 6 months. And people have had time to buy the dip on things that you wanted Meta below 700, below 600. You've had multiple opportunities. You know, you thought you missed the Robinhood train. You've had your opportunities. Even Palantir got you at 120. Nebius fell all the way to almost below 70. SoFi obviously is giving you big opportunities. Like these names have only put up more stronger earnings. Microsoft is in a freaking bear market. They've given you opportunities. And now people are ready for those opportunities to start materializing in gains because we're so conditioned in this 3-year bull cycle we've had of buy the dip and we go up. And that's just not happening this time. At least not as easily as it happened last time. We have no more dry powder as well. Yeah, that's also the other issue here. There's not that much dry powder going around, even though there are money on the sidelines. So eventually that money's going to try to come in. Okay, the ICE going to airports thing. Yeah, so Trump tweeted about that as well. So TSA is on strike because the DHS has not been funded, the Department of Homeland Security. By the way, Trump just tweeted again, so let me read this. But Trump said over the weekend that he will be sending ICE agents to airports to be able to get people and get the lines to hurry up, which I think you're going to get a lot of videos and a lot of content of, you know, people recording these ICE agents. I wonder how that's going to play out. But, you know, that is another thing that's going to be happening. So he said last night, the Democrats want to give our country away to the illegals who they allowed to pour through our very now strong border. I won't allow that to happen. The Democrats are grossly incompetent. ICE is ready to go on Monday. And then he just tweeted, I don't think we should be making any deal with the crazy country-destroying radical left Democrats and until they vote with Republicans to pass the Save America Act. It is far more important than anything else we are doing in the Senate, and that includes giving these same terrible people a $5 billion cut in ICE funding, a deal which, when disguised as something else, is unacceptable to me and the American people, unless it includes their approval of voter ID, no mail-in voting, citizenship to vote, and no paper ballots. They will never be elected again. In other words, lump everything together as one and vote, kill the filibuster, stay in D.C. for Easter if necessary, make America great again. So the Save America Act, which is going to require voting or require IDs to vote, that is also something that is in contention politically. And I don't think the Republicans have enough Democrats to vote with them for this, which is why Trump is pissed off about this. Also, I don't think the Dems want to give Trump a win right here because, I mean, they kind of have him in a spot where they want him to be in, which is the war perceptually is going bad. Oil prices are up. I mean, the midterms, it's a pretty easy argument for the American people. They're just going to say, hey, look, Trump got us into a war. Your income is down. Inflation's up. Vote for us. We're going to fix everything. And so they're not going to give him a win by, like, here's the thing. If the Democrats don't vote for this voting bill and Trump says, I'm not going to pass anything until this bill is passed, then yes, it will look bad for the Democrats because they won't be able to get some of their stuff passed. But it's also not going to look the best for the Republicans because Trump is not going to pass anything, which means airports are going to be stuck for like the next 7 months. But it's kind of a lose-lose. It's not really like, yeah, I'm not going to sign anything until you sign this, because there's a lot of stuff he probably wants to sign that if he's saying he's not going to sign it until this is signed and the Democrats don't want to give him a win on this, then we're just in lame duck territory. A year before, usually presidents become lame ducks, which is after the midterms. So, you know, again, it just becomes a question of like, all right, I mean, the way this gets really bad for all of us is if it leads to a shutdown and then Trump's like, I'm not going to sign any bills to stop the shutdown until we pass the Save America Act, and the Democrats don't want to give it. I mean, then who knows if we're shut down for like more than 40 days, which is what happened last time. That's when shit can get really ugly. But hopefully it doesn't get to that point, and hopefully, you know, the Iran war ends before that takes place. Trump is live. Is he? He usually talks to Air Force One around this time. Usually when he's flying back from Mar-a-Lago. Oh, wait, we should watch a couple of these clips. I don't think he's live yet. He probably will be getting his quotes soon. The Dems have been offering to pass a bill to fund TSA that gets turned down by the GOP. It's all a mess. Legit, everything feels like chaos. Yeah, and again, these airports, I mean, SFO was okay, but Newark, which is a big international hub, felt like chaos. The pictures I've seen in JFK and Dallas feel like chaos. I mean, if the TSA doesn't get funded, the DHS doesn't get funded, the Save America voting bill thing doesn't get passed, and the war continues, it's just going to be ugly. And it's already ugly, but if that continues to be ugly, then, obviously that's not the best. There were a couple of clips of Trump and Rubio before he left. I think this is when Trump gave his quote about freaking the war will end soon. And they talk more about Cuba as well. Let me pull this up real quick, because that's what helped. That's what helped on Friday after hours.
South Korea, we're helping South Korea a lot.
Mr. President, do you think Israel will be ready to end the war when you're ready to end the war?
So. Mr. President, the relationship's a very good one. I think so.
Mr. President,
we want more or less similar things. You know what we want? We want victory, both of us, and that's what we've got.
Mr. President,
What's your plan for I may have a plan or I may not, but how would I ever say that to a reporter? If I said that to a reporter, Marker would say, "Please, sir, let's bring you over to the helicopter immediately." Right? No, I can't tell you that.
Mr. President,
This is what he said about Cuba.
Yes. How soon? President Trump said this week that he can take Cuba. How soon can that happen?
Well, I mean, Cuba's a disaster, and it's because of their communist government. It doesn't work. So I don't have any news for you on that today, other than that's been going on for 67 years. They're a disaster. It's the worst it's ever been.
And what are you guys hearing from your Senate colleagues about the chances of the Save America Act passing?
Well, it seems to be doing okay. It's voter ID. You have to have citizenship to vote. And I'm hearing very good things. I mean, I was hearing negative things because the Democrats are all against voter ID. They're all against citizenship to vote. They're against transgender. They like the transgender thing with mutilization of your children. All of the things that we talked about. We added two little elements. No men and women's sports, right? You know that. We added that. And when you add them all up, whether you take 4 or 5, I think they're all 95 to 99% issues. I hear it's going, look, it should be an easy pass, but we need Democrat votes. They don't want to approve voter ID because they cheat. They don't want to approve citizenship. In other words, we want to have citizenship in order to vote. You have to prove your citizenship. The Democrats don't want to do that. You know why, Peter? You know why? Because they want to cheat, Peter. Now, speaking of something that's more pleasant, see that? It's going to be the greatest ballroom anywhere in the world. Nothing like it. And they just started today, one of the biggest.
So as you can see, Trump is definitely not this was not live. This was on Friday before they went to Mar-a-Lago. Trump is definitely not a fan of how the Democrats are perceiving this bill. But the other reason I think they're going to struggle to get votes, outside of the obvious reason that the Democrats don't want to give him a win, is they're throwing in all these other stipulations of no men and women's sports and the transgender stuff. I mean, obviously, the Democrats have a different perspective on this, whether you agree with that or not. So they're not going to vote for some massive bill filled with all these different, there's just no way in hell they're going to vote for it. It's just not going to happen. So, the idea that they're going to get this thing passed, and Trump is saying this is the only thing that I'm going to pass until I pass anything else. Again, it just feels like we're going to have a lot of, I guess you could call it a macro filibuster that's going to be taking place because nothing's going to get passed. Especially if this bill's not getting passed. Bitcoin right there above 68,000. And so that's what we're navigating, I guess, inside of the United States right now. The Q's below 580, are they? Yeah, 579 on the Q. We were at 587 on the Friday close. And we are back down now. Trump is not talking live yet. Again, I don't know if he's going to go live tonight. Usually on Sunday nights, he talks on Air Force One, usually around this time, to be honest. But I'm not seeing any quotes from him. I'm not seeing any streams up from him. So we might have to view that tomorrow morning. But as of now, we're not seeing it. Ugly stuff, guys. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. It's uglier than ugly. It is indeed ugly. Dude, the Clarity Act, I still struggle to think why people care so much about the Clarity Act. It is a good piece of legislation. I do not think that is the savior for crypto prices. So do I want the Clarity Act to get passed? Obviously, and Vlad, he tweeted all weekend about why we need to pass the Clarity Act, all this, but that's not sending Bitcoin to 80,000. Like, that's not just like, maybe it does a voluntary $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 candle, but what's controlling crypto right now is macro. What's controlling everything is macro right now. But also, is Trump going to even sign the Clarity Act if, the voter ID thing doesn't get passed? So it's like, forget that impact on crypto, but like no bill, as per Trump, is going to get passed unless he actually gets that bill passed. By the way, we got some TSM updates. Taiwan Semi-Arizona Fab 4 already fully booked despite not yet breaking ground. Apple, NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm seeking more U.S. production capacity to ensure supply chain security. TSMC projects that U.S., Japan, and Germany could account for 20% of total production by 2028 on that new semiconductor Fab 4 in Arizona. That's bullish. That's super bullish. But we have a war going on, which is, not really going to get the market to care about that. Like the weird part about this economy that we're in is there's like every day more and more updates around why AI is so bullish. Whether it's anecdotal, whether it's what you're seeing at GTC, whether it's Elon talking about 1,000 gigawatts of energy. Like, there's so many bullish things to latch onto. But the market is still a real market that needs momentum and that needs a macro backdrop to actually stay still or go up. And when you have a chart like this, which is not Bitcoin, it's not the S&P, it's Dubai real estate being down 60%. This is the DFM real estate index over the past 3 weeks. Like, how do we expect any headlines to be taken seriously around tech stocks? Oh, yes. And for those bringing up the job point, we have functionally gained 0 jobs this year in 2026. And we lost 1 million on the revision in 2025. It's like war, oil's up, and no jobs. And the Fed's like, oh yeah, the labor market's not a concern. It's like, but like the Fed, and my conspiracy is the Fed wants the labor market to not be a concern so that people lose their jobs, they stop spending money so that inflation goes down, because they know inflation's about to go up because of this oil shit. Now, having said that, if you can look past the next 5 months and look to 5 years, I think these stocks are trading at incredible valuations across the board. Some of them still a bit egregious, but many of them, like, it's hard to imagine they're necessarily, like, as much as I think Micron does struggle with the cyclicality narrative, it should not be trading at 5 times forward earnings. So, like, these are names that are cheap. What messes up the earnings, or what messes up the potential of feeling these names are undervalued is if the E changes, right? If the actual earnings growth estimates change because of a war, recession, whatever happens, if there is that macro catalyst, then yeah, the PEs become overvalued. I mean, quite frankly, the reason the PEs went from the 30s to the 20s on the Max 7 is because they're spending all their free cash flow outside of NVIDIA on CapEx. And, that's why that's happening. But if that goes away and markets can see ROI and there's a good macro backdrop, I think we easily go back into the 30 PE average that these companies have been trading at, because they deserve to be trading at that if you look at the margin profile. Just right now, we're not there. We need the aliens to come save us. Yeah, could you imagine if we had to deal with an alien invasion now? Like, that would be definitely something. Would not help. Talk about your pedicure. I did get a pedicure over the weekend. I probably can't afford it, but I did get one. You got to be following me on Instagram to keep up with the pedicure journey. I'll put the Instagram in the chat. The Instagram is also on my new website that I vibe coded. I sound like such a nerd for saying that. I sound like such a nerd. A lot of people message me, though, saying you can't show the feet for free. And I agree. That was a strategic blunder I made. But nonetheless, You know, it's been like 3 months since I had a pedicure, dude. So it was time. It was time to get a pedicure. And it felt great. It felt phenomenal. In the midst of losing all this money over the past few months, it was time to freaking, yeah, do self-care. Exactly. It was self-care with a pedicure. I have no money, but at least the mid has fresh cut and clean toenails. Exactly. Dude, I really do recommend men should get pedicures. Like, it's just hygienic. It's not even that crazy. And it feels good. Like, it's I started getting pedicure like 3 years ago, and I think it is the right strategy. I cannot imagine getting one. Try it out. It's not that crazy. My mom makes me get one with her every time I see her. Okay, I haven't got one with my mom ever, but you know, it is always funny though, because if you're a guy and you walk into the nail salon and they're like, "What do you want?" and you say, "You just gotta own it, bro," because they will smile every time. Dude, every time they smile, because in their head they're probably like, "Gay," but you just got to be like, "Pedicure," and they're like, "Pedicure?" You're like, "Yep, I want a pedicure." You just have to freaking own it, because if not, you're just gonna be embarrassed. So, Mitt, I'm thinking of flying out to Chicago meetup all the way from Jersey. Couldn't make the New York one. We would love to have you there. Again, the website has all the details on the meetups. LA is going to be super fun. I'm excited for that. Yeah, it'll be fun, dude. I know the markets have been kind of crappy, but it'll be nice to meet people in person, get to talk about their ideas, how they're navigating. I mean, one of the cool things about these meetups is you get to learn different strategies and ideas from other people that are actually buying single stocks, that are not just, you know, throwing money into their 401k and buying the S&P. Like, people are actually deploying strategies and options, and they have ideas and they have methodologies and like all that. I mean, I learned so much from talking to people about this stuff when I'm at the meetups. So I think it should be fun for Los Angeles. Yes, it comes with one drink. There's an opening drink and then dinner. So your ticket includes dinner. Your ticket includes an opening, I think it's like mimosa or something. And then there will be a bar available at the event itself. So it should be fun. Should be fun. Singapore will have details soon. We just booked the venue like literally yesterday. So probably by midweek we'll have details. But the Chicago stuff and the LA stuff is on the website. Okay, what else do we got? Do we have any other big pieces of news? We talked about oil. We talked about the Elon stuff. One fun fact based on Elon's TerraFab, he wants 100 million square feet. That is 3 times the size of Central Park in New York City. So, and then Elon said 100 million square feet is the right order of magnitude. So you're talking about a very, very large fab to build these chips, which hopefully is bullish. Tanner's unfortunately not going. Tanner's not going to be able to make this one. But hopefully when he does a meetup, we'll be able to go to his in Toronto. Hamid, how do you have time to pull off everything you're doing, shows, events, etc.? Well, that was part of the reason why I hired a manager this year. A lot of this is being offloaded from me to have all the responsibility for, which I'm very grateful for. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm lacking on that I got to get back into action. So I spent a lot of time this weekend getting the Substack ready, and I want to put out like 3 or 4 articles this week. So I know we haven't posted in a couple months. I have a lot of ideas. Just getting down to sit and actually type them out was something I focused on over the weekend. So that should be coming out soon. I actually got a lot of shit done this weekend, dude. Just a lot of like logistical things I needed to get off my plate. I had to call a lot of people, message, fix this, fix that. It was a very productive weekend. I always feel good on a weekend. Like I like those weekends where you just like sit and do nothing. But I also like the weekends where it's like you actually just get shit done. And this is one of those weekends where we got some shit done. Yeah, you just got to keep grinding, right? I mean, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? You got one life. You got to keep working. There's not much more to do other than, keep going for it. Also, if there's a war going on, I mean, like, look, when shit hits the fan, this is the time to just keep putting your head down and building, right? Like, it's the same thing as like when the market goes down, you put your head down, you buy, and you weather through the storm. It's the same thing in life. Like, whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying to build, you keep pushing. You keep freaking pushing. Monday's gonna suck. Where's the S&P? 647. Yeah, I mean, look, but here's the thing, where it's like doom and gloom in the futures, but then tomorrow if we gap up for whatever reason, I mean, would it surprise anybody? Probably not. Probably not. So I don't know. I don't know if Monday has to be as ugly as people think it could be. Did a man do the pedicure? Yes. It's not gay, bro. It's just, it is what it is, bro. It is what it is. The lady was doing someone else, so the man did it. It is what it is. It's not that crazy. SoFi news, no, just the Muddy Waters report, which I still don't think is that legit, but it is what it is. I mean, you did have this tweet over the weekend that we didn't talk about. Definitely upset a lot of people. President said Robert Mueller died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people. So Robert Mueller, who was, head of the FBI, carried out the Russia investigation with Trump back in 2018. Obviously, Trump wasn't a fan of all that happening. He passed away over the weekend, and the president said, good. It is what it is. Here is what Besant had to say about that.
Ask you on a different topic about a post by President Trump from yesterday responding to the death of former special counsel Robert Mueller. He posted this quote, Robert Mueller just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people. Do you think it's appropriate for the president of the United States to celebrate the death of an American citizen, someone who's a Bronze Star, Purple Heart recipient and who served in Vietnam?
Kristen, I was with the president in the green room at Davos, and there was a video playing of the what may have been an illegal raid on his home at Mar-a-Lago. They are going through his wife's wardrobe, and I watched the look in his eye, and I think that neither one of us can understand what has been done to the president and to his family.
But to the question of the president's post, I mean, Robert Mueller didn't order that raid. Is it appropriate for the president to celebrate the death of any American citizen,
again,
Mr. Secretary?
I think that given what has been done to President Trump and his family, it is impossible for either of us to understand what he has been through.
So you don't think that there's anything wrong with the post saying, good, Robert Mueller's dead?
Again, I think that we should all have a little empathy for what has been done to him and his family.
All right. Treasury Secretary Scott.
I mean, you either agree with that framing of politics or you disagree. But that was at least Besant's defense of what the president had to say. So you had a lot of stuff happen over the weekend. You had the Mueller stuff. You had the 48 hours thing. You had Iran basically saying, you're not going to bomb us. I mean, their foreign ministry came out and said, we're not opening up the strait, basically, essentially saying we're going to call your bluff. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. I mean, things could get pretty ugly if they actually do go back and forth. And then you have the general volatility in oil prices continuing to go higher. That's what we got. That is what we've got. Buy roll of the IEA compares the situation to being more severe than both the 1970 oil shock combined. Wow. There's been a bunch of representation from the IEA coming out and talking about this situation. I mean, I did do a little bit of research into the oil crisis in the 70s, and I mean, it wasn't pretty. It absolutely wasn't pretty. Gold, by the way, crashed more than 50% during the Iran war in 1979 as oil continued to spike up. I mean, gold's not down 50%, but if you've got people in the IEA saying that this is worse than the 70s, could that happen to an asset like gold? I don't know. But if it does, obviously that wouldn't be the best. Are you wearing a SpongeBob sweatshirt? No, it's a Robin Hood hoodie. officially wearing their hoodie. It's actually really good quality. It was like, what, $120? Look, I don't mind actually paying more for like stuff. I'm going to wear this for a long time. I actually don't mind paying more for stuff like that. But I wasn't buying the jacket. The jacket was like $800. I was like, okay, I'm not. It was like $750, $740. That I was not going to buy. What else? What else do we got? Is that it? Is that pretty much it? Muddy Waters responded to SoFi. I mean, Muddy Waters did come out and they said we asked SoFi for answers to questions. SoFi didn't answer. And so they were like, Noto can keep saying he wants to buy stock, but I don't know, dude. I just feel like this back and forth we've seen so many times with firms being upset about fair value accounting and how SoFi is navigating all this stuff. I think SoFi's stuck in a really crappy narrative right now, which is unfortunately that the banks are in trouble to an extent. Even though SoFi is not loaded up on private credit or private equity, there is a way you can link them to that. And then you have a pretty influential short saying that SoFi is not responding. Now, I've seen Tim Sweeney's response and a lot of people in the community that have a much better understanding of SoFi than I do. And from my understanding, what they're saying is very logical. But at this point, it doesn't matter. The stock is the stock, and it's reacting the way that it is. All right, guys. I think that's pretty much it. Is that it? Is that all what we got? I don't think there's anything that big. Do you still have SoFi? Yes, I have SoFi. I did not think it was going to get destroyed this year, but it did. But it's not just SoFi. It's fintech, right? Like HUD, Coinbase, Affirm. I mean, everything at this point. We talked about it on Friday. The only way to have survived the past 3 months is oil. You would have to be leveraged oil, right? Then you're probably super green. That's number one. Number two is you would have had to be in these very small cap companies that have exploded in the AI supply chain ecosystem. I know the photonics are the ones that have hit most of the excitement. A lot of those names have been hit pretty hard from the highs. AAOI was 130, now it's at 87. But the stock was also at 20 in January, right? So like you could, but that's when the market cap was also, $2 billion. So you could have been in that to kind of have momentum. Or number three, you have to be short. You have to have some puts. Or I should say number four, you have to be in value stocks, right? So either you were short, you were in very hyper speculative small caps, you were in oil, or you were in value. I put VG in the same oil bucket. Now, there have been ways to navigate a portfolio without those four specific broad themes, but at its core, if you are in the Robinhoods or the Rocket Labs or the Nebuses which Nebius is actually doing well, but again, a lot of people bought this thing at 120, 130 back in October, right? So it was down a lot, and maybe you bought the dip, but it was also up a lot from where it was before the soybean tweet in October. But if you're in the Teslas, the Nvidias, the Metas, the Googles, the Microsofts, the SaaS names, the fintechs, the new banks, the quantum names are all down 50% this year. ServiceNow, the Neo Clouds have gotten hit outside of Nebius year to date. Apple, I mean, maybe the defense contractors have held up a little bit and given some momentum. Broadcom's just, a mess. Trade Desk, gold and silver. I mean, most people did not buy it when it was on the way up. They bought it when it was up, and now it's on the way down. Like, it hasn't been that easy to hide. Or memory, I should say, if you're in memory. But if you got in memory late, Micron's down. If you got in memory at the beginning of the year, it's up 30%. You're doing well. International markets, Grab, C Limited, Nubank, as the dollar has gone up. I mean, if you were buying the Dixie, that has returned a bit from 90 to 100, but it's been tough to hide because the pain has been pretty universal. Chinese stocks haven't done well. I don't think so. KWeb year to date is what? Yeah, dude, KWeb's down 20%. Oh, how much is BABA down this year? BABA is up. Wow, BABA's down 20. Oh yeah, I forgot they got hit heavy on their. They missed EPS pretty badly on earnings, which was surprising to me because I don't think BABA should be getting hit on earnings, but it did. ASTS, Nebius, and Rocket Lab helped. Yeah, and again, all this comes down to entry prices, right? Like Nebius at 70, great entry price. Rocket Lab at 40, great entry price. Rocket Lab at 80 or 90, bad entry price. ASTS at 120 bad entry price. But ASTS is up 7% this year. ASTS was up at 1.60%. You know, it's just had a meaningful drawdown from those levels. SanDisk, Seagate, Western Digital, yes, they've all done well. But again, you've had to be, in the right timeline for them. All right. I think we will be back tomorrow morning. IEA decision on releasing more oil are not tied to any particular crude price benchmark, indicates ongoing global consultations with potential additional oil stock releases if required. IEA highlights that fuel scarcity is an escalating concern in Asian countries. Yeah, I mean, it's really bad for some of these non-developed countries as well, where, the cost of petroleum and oil really does matter. Dude, the whole year has just been a mess. Like, it's just been an absolute mess. That's like, and we already had some fundamental issues with the labor market and with the broader AI concerns. I mean, like, we thought we were fighting a war with the market to believe that AI was real, when in reality, it doesn't even matter if AI is real anymore, because we've got this freaking war that the markets are just like, they have no idea what to do with this information. This is why you keep seeing the choppiness of it. And even if we do go bullish after the war, now we have to fight a new war about, we got to get rid of inflation, because we're going to get some inflation over the next few months. It's inevitable. And we once again have to prove that AI is like a legit thing, no matter how much Jensen says it is. Which, again, if you put a line in the sand and you say, no, I think AI is real, you're buying these stocks, I think years from now people will be rewarded. But obviously in the short term, we're not seeing that. SMCI could get delisted, dude. If that happens, it would be so ugly. I don't know. It depends on the investigation, right? SMCI down another 5% after hours. All right. I think that's it, folks. I think we are done. We will be back tomorrow on the market open. I'm going to try to wake up at 4:30 tomorrow and start off this week waking up early. I've been really trying to wake up early. I ended up waking up by like 6:30, and I want to see, can I wake up at 4:30? Can we start the day off fresh, do what we need to do, and then keep it going? And then keep it going. It's been an ugly few months, ugly start to the year. Obviously, I think equity markets are trying to price in the magnitude of different things that have happened, but I do think eventually this will relax. I don't think Trump's going to keep this war going on for the next 10 months. Like, I think we could get a ceasefire sooner than later. It could happen potentially this week based on all the different headlines we've seen, and things could flip really quickly. So if they do, that'll be better than not. You guys really like the hair, dude. I see a lot of comments, people liking the hair. I didn't do anything different with the hair. I just didn't wear the hat today. That's it. I didn't put any gel. There's no special haircut. I trimmed my beard, but that's it. Gene said, I'm with you on the 4 a.m. wake up. Dude, I need to, like, being able to wake up at 4:30 every morning and just, like, attack the day is very exciting. Very, very exciting. That's what I want to do. Fresh brows, fresh hairline, fresh teeth, and fresh toes. I did get a cleaning with my teeth last week, so that is also true. We should stay on call, Steve. I don't think Steve's available right now. Steve still has a corporate job, and he still has work tomorrow. Wasn't Steve live like a couple hours ago with Matt? Well, we'll definitely. I was on the phone with Steve last night. We were talking about a bunch of different stuff. We have a lot of episodes for Basis Points to record in April as well. So, yeah, we have tons of episodes ready. And then we got the LA meetup, dude. We're going back to Cali this week. After this final meetup for the month of March, we get a full April to chill out. And then we'll start May. Amit, I'm a follower of yours. I'm a sleep physician, and I'm going to tell you waking up at 4:30 without gradual advancing is most likely not going to work. Advance time gradually 30 minutes every 3 days. You know, that you're probably right about this. Wow, a sleep physician. I mean, it's definitely going to have to be a gradual process. I even myself, as much as I want to just say, all right, I'm going to wake up at 4:30 every day, it's not going to happen, right? So hopefully, aim for the stars, land on the moon type of thing. Maybe we get 5:30 tomorrow instead of 4:30. But that's cool, dude. A sleep physician. That is so cool. My sleep physician is melatonin. You're probably shaking your head right now. Is it even good to take melatonin? Like, I've heard so many. By the way, Brian Johnson did freaking DMT live today on X. Like the guy who wants to live forever. He literally live streamed himself for 2 hours doing DMT, which is like one of the biggest psychedelic drugs that's out there. It was crazy, bro. And then he talked about his experience. This is him asleep after he did it. Wild, bro. Absolutely wild. I don't think I could ever do DMT, dude. That shit is scary. Even though I've listened to all the Joe Rogan podcasts about it, where it's like 15 minutes and it's like a different version of ayahuasca without like all the throwing up and stuff. It's like super psychedelic. I just feel like it's so scary, bro. It's so scary to wake up and like go through all that. But he did it. All right, is that it? We're done. We'll be back tomorrow morning. See what we got to do. Don't think there's anything else too crazy. We're back in the studio. We'll have no interruptions until Friday. Friday, we will have the market open from LA. Then Saturday with a meetup. Sunday. We will miss the Monday close. We'll do the Monday open because we'll be on the flight. And then after that Monday close, we are good for the next month and a half. Really 2 months, because May is just Chicago. And then really 3 months, because then Singapore is at the end of June. So really for the next 3 months, we should have zero interruptions outside of like 1 or 2 days on the market open, market close. And so we should be able to keep going from there. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Love you all. Thank you all for being here. We'll be back tomorrow morning. We'll keep it going. We'll have all the details for the meetups coming up soon. Again, akmedia.news is the website. You should have all the updates. I'll add more stuff to it, but for those that are looking to get in touch or the meetups or any of that stuff, it should all be there. And we will keep it going from there. LA on Saturday, and then we'll have Chicago going into May. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the market open once again from the studio. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. I'll let you guys know if I wake up at 4:30. I'll post on my Instagram story if I wake up at 4:30. Let's do that. If I wake up at 4:30, so I'll put the Instagram in the chat. If I wake up at 4:30, you will see the Instagram story of it. So there you go. All right. Bye, everybody. Good night. Have a good one.